Here on the ground, change happens fast. Problems feel frequent and urgent. It's loud and anxiety runs high. From a satellite view, the Earth looks the same as it did thousands of years ago. We've been here before. Let's learn from our past and shoot for a better future.
Todd Mikkelson here with a satellite view. Thanks for tuning in. We're speaking at you from November 23rd, 2022 in the space and time continuum. Yesterday, the 59th anniversary of the very sad assassination of John F. Kennedy. But also, Donald's no good, very bad day, writes Mueller, she wrote. Lindsey Graham testified for 2 hours to the Georgia grand jury. SCOTUS voted 9-0 to send Trump's tax returns to a House committee. Also, the Senate committee will have access to those, the adjacent Senate committee. And, of course, that's going to stay in the hands of Democrats. So we'll be hearing about Donald's tax returns, probably. People think they're going to leak. Another thing, Jim Trusty, I trust him. Jim Trusty got his clock cleaned by the 11th Circuit in the Docs case. Also, he's not happy about the appointment of Jack Smith. Mueller, she wrote, also points out that Garland's appointment of a special counsel, Jack Smith, actually protects the Trump investigations from being defunded because special counsel is not funded through congressional appropriation. It's funded from a permanent Treasury fund controlled by Merrick Garland, the Attorney General. So Marjorie Taylor Greene and her, we're going to defund it. Well, she can't defund it. And also some good news in Georgia. The Supreme Court said that, yes, we can have early voting this coming Saturday. Another thing about the Lindsey Graham, people are speculating that he did not plead the Fifth because he wasn't in there very long. Also, news just yesterday, I believe, the governor here in Minnesota said that they're putting paid family and medical leave on a fast track, which makes me very happy. As a small business owner, I was working on this for the last 9 years, testifying in committees in St. Paul. And now we have the House and the Senate and the governor's mansion, so we're going to get that passed after 9 years of Republicans blocking it. But, so, with all that good news, what I want to do is go through one of our stories that we like to go through because we're called a satellite view. We like to look at things from a satellite view, therefore learn from our past. Maybe that'll help us build a better future. We always have to remember our past because otherwise you repeat all your mistakes. So we're going to have a historic ride we're going to go on, and this ride's going to include the Roman Empire, a mediocre B-movie actor, women's reproductive rights, taxes on churches, evangelical Christian influence, and hot pool boys, Trump and Russia, Kevin McCarthy, the rotting of the GOP, swinging, and again, hot pool boys. Let's go back to the year 312 is when we believe the Roman Empire, when Constantine, the emperor of Rome from 306 to 337. I don't know how they said years back then, I heard Jackie Kennedy on a videotape where she was giving a tour of the White House where she called 1901, she said 1901. I always think it's interesting how people, we switched from 2000, 2005, that's how we always said it. And then in the teens, we switched to 2011, 2012, 2020. Anyway, so I don't know how you said it back then. And I got to try and concentrate to stay on track because this is already going to be a long ride. And we're already fell out. We fell out of the car we're in. Okay. So Constantine is the emperor of Rome from the year 306 to 337, 300 years after Christ supposedly was a thing. He granted the Christian church a complete exemption from all forms of taxation following his supposed conversion to Christianity circa 312. So the oldest and most corrupt corporation in the world captured him, and he had to retire the toga party era and was captured by the Roman Catholic Church. In Britain, they got rid of churches paying taxes. And of course, this is because churches were supposed to be charitable. So when they're doing charitable things, it could be argued that they shouldn't be taxed. Kind of like a nonprofit sort of situation. In the United States, right away, 9 of the 13 original colonies were given some kind of tax relief to churches. During the 19th century, in the 1800s, James Madison, James Garfield, and Ulysses S. Grant, he submitted a 900-foot-long petition containing 35,000 signatures to Congress in 1875, demanding that churches and other ecclesiastical property should be no longer exempt from taxation. Grant told Congress that in 1850, the church properties in the U.S. which paid no taxes, municipal or state, amounted to about $83 million. In 1860, the amount had doubled, and by 1875, it was about $1 billion. By the year 1900, it exceeded $3 billion, just in revenues lost because we don't tax the churches. There was an argument that not taxing the churches guarantees the separation of church and state, but of course, it's also giving preferential treatment by the state to the churches, so it's also argued that it violates the separation of church and state. Going back to 1847, it's the formation of the American Medical Association. Doctors band together to form the AMA. It became male-dominated authority on medical practices. The members believed they should have the power to decide when an abortion could be legally performed. At the same time, the AMA was composed of physicians who lacked expertise in pregnancy and reproductive health. Sound familiar? Yes. Let's go into the late 30s, all the way from 1937 to 1965. There was an actor in really crappy movies, B movies. He was considered a very highly mediocre actor, and his name was Ronald Reagan. And although he was nothing but a B-movie actor and TV personality up until 1965, the very next year, 1966, he ran for governor in California. And in 1967, when he was only in office for maybe 5 months, he signed what is called the Therapeutic Abortion Act. Liberalized the abortion rights. It made it so that abortion was legal up to 20 weeks, and it expanded legal abortion to include rape or incest to protect the physical and mental health of the mother. Before that, it was only if the mother is going to die if she does not get an abortion. That was the only legal abortions up until then. So Ronald Reagan signs pretty much what was considered the most liberal of abortion rights in 1967. In 1955, Senator at the time Lyndon Johnson passed legislation that ruled that churches can only hold their tax-exempt status if they stay out of politics. If they become politically active or vocal, they will lose their tax exemption. Now, what had been going on simultaneously, an evangelical a preacher named Jerry Falwell, he had a popular TV show in the 50s and 60s, and what also happened in 1954 was the Brown versus Board of Education. It was a landmark decision by the U.S. Supreme Court, which ruled that U.S. state laws establishing racial segregation in public schools are unconstitutional, even if the segregated schools are otherwise equal in quality. He started railing about that. Jerry Falwell did not like that ruling. He thinks that schools need to stay segregated because he's a dirty racist. And he thinks, the white people don't want to get any black on them. So we can't allow any black kids to go to any schools that have white kids. And he's railing against that. And then, more civil rights start to be made into law in the 1960s. He's railing against that. And then he starts to see that, oh, wow, most Americans think he's nothing but a dirty racist pig. So he needs to stop railing against the black people. He needs to stop railing against civil rights. So he changes then to abortion rights, partially because he's mad at Ronald Reagan now for signing the 1967 liberalization of California abortion laws. Also around this time, the late 60s, early 70s, the IRS was clamping down on churches paying taxes because of these churches being so vocal. Jerry Falwell realizes he needs more friends in Congress. So he starts getting more friends in Congress. The IRS clamping down on churches paying taxes is what triggered Jerry Falwell to become a pretty powerful political influence in the Republican Party. He ended up, of course, was a huge part of getting Reagan elected. Both Reagan and George H.W. Bush were very supportive of Planned Parenthood at the time. Planned Parenthood being an entity that began in the 1930s, I believe. And it was doing what it says. Plan your parenthood, family planning. Jerry Falwell hated that. And George W. Bush, around the late 70s, was also just getting rid of his drinking problem and, of course, became an evangelical Christian. Hey, Daddy, these guys really helped me. They really helped me get through my drunk. You should let them help you get elected, Daddy. You're running with that guy Reagan, right? So Jerry Falwell ends up really helping Reagan get elected. Now, of course, Reagan is beholden and immediately becomes anti-abortion, along with George H.W. Bush and the whole Republican Party. The only people that would listen to him, of course, were the Republicans by that time. The Republicans had been becoming more and more conservative and crazy. Jerry Falwell formed what's called the Moral Majority, which, of course, is a big lie and a ruse. It was the very early days of naming things that is in direct juxtaposition of what it really means or what it really is. But, his crusade had to change from segregation and civil rights and racism to being quote-unquote pro-life, another thing that is in juxtaposition of what it, in fact, truly means. Now, of course, Jerry Falwell, early crusader on thinking that laws don't apply to him because he's a Christian, pretty much ignoring the 1955 Lyndon Johnson rule that churches lose their tax exemption if they become politically active, because his church became very politically active. He went on to start a school, the Liberty University, that became a multi-billion-dollar grift. It led to, if we want to go all the way up to 2012, we find out that Jerry Falwell's son, Jerry Falwell Jr., had a fetish where he liked to watch his wife have sex with other people, and they they didn't even hire him. They just, a 20-year-old Randy pool boy at a hotel they're staying at in Miami. Jerry Falwell Jr.'s wife, who's the pool boy refers to as a cougar, she's pretty hot. She's there in a swimsuit. She's in her mid-40s. He's 20. And she says, hey, do you want to come to my hotel room? And he goes, yeah, sure, because he's a 20-year-old horny Randy guy. So they start this whole thing where Jerry Falwell is in the corner watching them the whole time. There's a new documentary movie about it that's actually really, really good because it talks not just about that scandal, but it also talks a lot about the evangelical Christian influence on the Republican Party. Anyway, it ended up bringing Jerry Falwell Jr. down. He was the head of Liberty University. A few years later, this story came out. And of course, he tried to throw his wife under the bus. He tried to say that it was all her fault. I don't want to go into too much detail about that particular story, because what we're talking about here is leading up to how the Republicans were being rotted out by this evangelical Christian influence thing. And we get up to an era where, if you remember, this is about 10 years ago now, so going back to about 2012, around the same time that the Falwells invite the pool boy to their hotel room, a book came out called Young Guns, and it was about Paul Ryan, Eric Cantor, and Kevin McCarthy. And the byline of it was The New Generation of Conservative Leaders. Now, of course, Paul Ryan and Eric Cantor are already in the past. So they've failed at being the new generation of conservative leaders. Kevin McCarthy is currently failing, but not finished yet failing. So all of this going on at the same time, I'm going to tie it up, but how about if we take a short break? You're listening to A Satellite View. I'm Todd Mikkelson. I want to thank you for listening. We can't always just be ranting. It's fun to do some research, tell some stories, and remember how these things are intertwined, how things work. So we'll keep on with this story when we come back on A Satellite View. You're listening to A Satellite View. I'm Todd Mikkelson. Back to our story. We were getting into the modern, very modern era now, talking about Kevin McCarthy, the one and only of the three young guns left. The one and only new generation of conservative leaders left. He is still in the process of failing, has not quite yet finished failing. Here's how sharp he is. A month before Donald Trump clinched the Republican nomination, one of his closest allies in Congress, House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, made a politically explosive assertion in a private conversation on Capitol Hill with his fellow GOP leaders that Trump could be the beneficiary of payments from Russian President Vladimir Putin. On June 15th, 2016, McCarthy told his fellow Republicans, quote, "There's two people I think Putin pays, Rohrabacher and Trump." Dana Rohrabacher, he's a former Republican representative. He earned a reputation as one of Russia's biggest congressional supporters. McCarthy added, swear to God, to that statement. And of course, it very quickly leaked. According to the recording, there is a recording of it, then House Speaker Paul Ryan, one of the already now failed young guns, he immediately interjected to the people in the room, insisting that the assembled Republicans, some of whom were heard laughing at the comments, not tell anyone about what McCarthy had just said. No leaks, Ryan said, adding, "This is how we know we're a real family here." What does that sound like? Oh, they're just all a bunch of amateur mobsters. Kevin McCarthy went on to become a Trumper, MAGAT. Now, I have theories about this. I think that all of the Republicans have been blackmailed by the Trump mob because of Russian money. Russia. In 2016, Russian money was laundered through probably all of their campaigns. Have you noticed that Mitt Romney never became a Trumper? Mitt Romney has always spoken out against Trump. Mitt Romney didn't run in 2016. He didn't become the current senator that he is until 2018. So he did not have Russian money laundered through his campaign. Now, this is a theory I have. I don't have any proof of this, but I've been thinking and saying this for years, and everybody I say it to ends up pretty much agreeing that it makes a lot of sense. Why would Kevin McCarthy say what he did after January 6th, where he said, Trump is responsible for this? And then within a week and a half or so, he goes down to Mar-a-Lago and he comes back and is obviously back on the Trump train. He goes on to this whole debacle of the January 6th committee. Now, the January 6th committee and what they did last summer, I believe, and so do a lot of other people, that it had a lot to do with these midterms and the incredible failure of the Republican Party in these midterms. A lot of things had to do with it. A big part of it, of course, was Gen Z coming out. A lot of it was the overturning of Roe v. Wade. But the January 6th committee had a record amount of people watching, just incredible amounts of people watching these hearings, and it really swayed people. Part of the reason the hearings went so smoothly is because Kevin McCarthy, very stupidly, he was going to try and put Jim Jordan onto that committee. It's a select committee. So he's supposed to choose some Republicans, and Nancy Pelosi's supposed to choose some Democrats for the select committee. She said, no, I'm not going to allow those guys on there because they're just going to muck it up. That's the only reason you're putting them there. I'm not going to allow it. Pick somebody else. And he said, no, I'm not going to pick anyone else. She goes, okay, well, then you're not going to have people on there. Now, she chose 2 Republicans. But Kevin McCarthy, he refused to put any Republicans on the committee. That's his little way of getting back at her. That's his way of owning the libs. That's his way of getting, I'll show Nancy Pelosi who the boss is. She's not the boss of me. I can tell you that. I'm not going to put any Republicans on that select committee. You guys can just do it yourself. So they did, and they swayed a huge amount of the American public and got a lot of people more fired up to vote against Republicans in the midterm elections. Kevin McCarthy, wow, he's so smart. God. Anyway, so now he thinks he's going to be the Speaker of the House. And what is he saying? We're going to investigate. First of all, he's been making promises to impeach Biden and impeach Kamala Harris. And he wants to be the Speaker of the House. Now, of course, that would mean that he would become president. And he thinks the American people are going to think that's a good idea. Of course, he knows they can't impeach him. They're just going to yell and scream about it. And his caucus is completely out of control. And he's promised when we get the House back, we're going to impeach Biden. What a poop show. And what's some other things? Oh, we're gonna investigate Hunter Biden too. Just absolute crazy stupidity he has promised, and now he has to either deliver on those promises, or the Republicans and the base will be mad at him and think he's a failure, or he has to own up to reality and say, okay, we can't do this. So at what point did he think that was going to be smart? It's hard to tell because he's so dumb. Dumb people think dumb things are smart. So Kevin McCarthy is being challenged in the run for the Speaker. Andy Biggs, crazy Magat, is running against him for Speaker of the House. Of course, who does he make a deal with? Marjorie Taylor Greene. So she's backing Kevin McCarthy. He wanted to get her on his side. So, okay, I need to grab the crazies so that the crazy guy doesn't win. I need to win this. And so now he's going to have to do what Marjorie Taylor Greene tells him to do. So the Republicans are splitting in half, very much like the Whigs did in the 1840s, and it ended up extincting that party. And I believe that's what's happening to the Republican Party right now. They have I think the final vote tally is in, and they ended up with 222 seats. Of course, my prediction was that Democrats were going to have 222 seats. I was wrong on that one. But the Republicans are going to have a very, very narrow margin. It's very difficult to work in that kind of thing because you basically have to get every single person from your party to agree on all the things you're trying to do. Nancy Pelosi is a mastermind at doing that. Kevin McCarthy is the dumbest of the dummies, by far the dumbest party leader. But hey, he's the new generation of conservatives. He's a young gun. Now, of course, the whole Russia thing ended up being true. Russia also helped get Trump elected. Trump, of course, did not win the popular vote. He only won the electoral vote. And it was because of a lot of different things. Again, a lot of it was Jill Stein, who was a Russian agent. There's photos of her having dinner with Vladimir Putin and Michael Flynn in Russia in 2015. She ran as a Green Party, I believe, candidate in 2016, and she took away enough votes from Hillary Clinton to make Trump win in very crucial states like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, two states that really made Trump win the election. If Jill Stein had not been in the election, Hillary Clinton would have won those states and Trump would have never been president. So you could say right there, Russia stole the election by just having one of their agents, Jill Stein, be a part of the election. Trump, of course, keeps saying, he keeps denying any ties with Russia. Of course, he's got tons of ties with Russia. That's a whole nother story. But something that just happened last week. A Republican political strategist was convicted of illegally helping a Russian businessman contribute to Donald Trump's presidential campaign in 2016. Jesse Benton, he was pardoned by Trump in 2020 for a different campaign finance crime, months before he was indicted again on 6 counts related to facilitating an illegal foreign campaign donation. He was found guilty Thursday on all 6 counts. What he did was he bought a $25,000 ticket to a September 2016 Republican National Committee event on behalf of Roman Vasilenko. Vasilenko is under investigation in Russia for allegedly running a pyramid scheme. You can buy a ticket and give it to anyone you want, but the problem is that this Russian guy gave him the $25,000 to buy the ticket. Talk about laundering money. That's directly filtering money through the Republican Party to get political favors, whatever they are. It doesn't matter what they are, really. Laundering Russian money. There's proof that it was going on just in this one story. Now, Jerry Falwell Jr. basically was, because of the scandal with the pool boy, was blackmailed by the Trump mob syndicate to help Trump get elected. He brought Trump under his wing, let Trump speak at the Liberty University, and endorsed Trump, which was a big part of getting the evangelicals to support Trump during the primaries. Some of the photos and video are still in the hands of Michael Cohen, who at the time was the Trump mob fixer guy. He's the soldier on the street, basically. There were some guys that were trying to blackmail the pool boy and Jerry Falwell, and Michael Cohen solved that problem. He's the fixer. He fixed that problem. He made those guys go away. And Jerry Falwell then, in order to thank Trump for having his fixer fix his big problem, endorsed Trump. He ended up becoming a drunk himself and got brought down by the whole scandal. It's just kind of funny how the IRS, basically trying to instill the rule of law, ends up triggering these evangelicals to become more political. They weren't all that political before that. Then their 40-year-long plan basically now is finally looks like it's coming to an end. So we come to the end of our ride. The Republican Party got corrupted and rotted by listening to the evangelical Christians and then running against things that the American people want. Basically what they're doing is putting themselves in a stop pattern, so they're unable to grow along with the American public. And what ends up happening then is they get what they want. They get what they've been working on for 40 years. They overturned Roe v. Wade. And it is one of the final nails in their coffin. That was a big part of turning this election into pretty much a blue tsunami, because we needed a blue tsunami just to prevent the red tsunami. The decisions by Kevin McCarthy, who ends up being the only person from the past who's not, started off not being a MAGAT. Now, of course, he's very much up Trump's butt. That's because he was probably blackmailed by the Trump mob. And so he's making every mistake you could possibly make to fire up Democrats to vote, promising what the Republicans are going to do if they win. And it's all stupid crap that the American people are so sick of. He's talking about it ever since Election Day. He's been talking about it, even though Election Day basically said, no, stop it. He's not stopping it. So we come to the end of our ride. I guess I was just trying to show how all of these things ended up happening and affecting this last summer. Jerry Falwell and his son, and their corruption bleeding into the Republican Party, and the fact that Russia saw the vulnerabilities in America and ended up installing their guy into the White House. So everything coming to a head here this last summer, which it really does look like the Republicans are going the way of the Whigs. It really does look like that. Just yesterday, we found out that things are moving forward and the walls are really falling in, really coming in on Trump. And you can tell Trump is really scared and nervous about it. He's criticizing his own Supreme Court. He's got, 3 of the 9 people he installed in there. Thanks for listening to this long ride, and we'll be doing another show soon. Have no idea what's going to happen between now and then. So this is Todd Mikkelson, A Satellite View. We'll talk to you soon.
Been listening to A Satellite View with Todd Mikkelson. Go to toddmikkelson.com for links and more information.